No one likes to give or receive bad news. 但是在职场上，有好一点的做法，也有很糟糕的做法。今天就来借由错误的示范，来了解应该要怎么做会比较好哦。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. About 2 weeks ago, if you checked the news, everyone was talking about large mortgage lender, Better.com, fired 900 or about 12% of its workforce over one 90-second Zoom call. Today, we want to talk about how do you deliver bad news and why was the backlash of the CEO's statement so strong?
我想他在做这个 Zoom call 完之后，好像这个新闻一报道出来嘛，好像他现在是在长期休假的状态了 right? He basically had to take time off because he got so much backlash.
Yeah, there's so much backlash, I think, that immediately the COO made an announcement that he was taking a time off for family and mental rest.
And I think this is probably the worst thing that you would hear in a workplace.
Yeah, I don't think anyone enjoys the layoff season. And I think the timing also created an extra pressure because it was right around Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Right before you're going into Christmas. Plus, for the US especially, you have New Year's bonuses, right? End of year bonus should be about this time. So you have holiday pressure, plus holidays are very expensive for most Americans,
没错。
into, are you being let go without any kind of end of year bonus?
就像我们在过年的时候一定会拿到一个 bonus 嘛，那这个时候也就是国外的大家买礼物的时候啊，我们的 spending 都会特别的多，花的特别多钱。这个时候呢，这位 CEO 就决定了用这么短那么有讲求 efficiency 的方式
Whether effectiveness trumped efficiency
Right.
or vice versa really comes into play here.
那我们在我们的讲义里面也会有连接，就是有很多人上网了就分享了这一整段的 video， 其实这整段的 video 非常的短，那我们看了之后真的是摇头，因为第一个没有人喜欢被 laid off, no one, literally no one, this is the worst thing， 但是你又要在这么 impersonal 的这种方式，然后他整个 delivery 他所讲的话，他所讲的那些内容真的很令人傻眼。
So, of course, no one likes being fired, but we also often see being let go, being fired outside of very specific circumstances as a chance to maybe learn what was going on. But in this case, with mass firing, there's nothing to learn, right? It's just straight up a message of you're being let go, and the way they handle it is the follow-up is very impersonal. And what happens is, okay, this is never a great situation. But the way the CEO talks about it and the way that he frames it out also creates a massive amount of backlash. First of all, it's a 90-second to 2-minute call. It's really not long, but even in that, for the first minute, it's really kind of vague what's going on. Like it's ominous. You know something bad is about to happen.
Yeah.
But he just kind of dances around it and then also kind of brings it back to himself. So at the beginning, he's like, I come to you with not great news. It's been a really challenging year. These kind of things are vague, but you know that something bad is going to happen. Or he talks about like the market is changing. We have to move with it to survive. Like it's like a horror movie where you hear the music come on, like someone's in a dark house and that music comes on and you just know something's happening.
那我觉得中间其实最 like one of the worst thing that he said, and it just sounds so insensitive. He said, I had to do this twice in my career and I cried the last time, but this time I hoped to be stronger.
Right. Like he hasn't even really delivered the truly bad news and he's already trying to make it look like he deserves sympathy.
Like it's about him, right? 这个 firing 对他来讲是很大的打击. So that was so awful. It was so insensitive because obviously he's the one that's laying off 900 people. It's not about him.
Yeah, he's still getting salary, right? But
exactly.
then it's just like, you should understand this is difficult for me.
You should
it's
understand
like,
I'm not going to cry this time.
Yeah. Like, of course, it's difficult as a boss. You don't want to be the person to fire yourself, but it's much worse for the other side. To turn around and be like, oh, you know, I've had to do this and I'm trying to be strong. But it's just like, this is not about you.
Yeah. And the second thing that he did was to really just shifting that responsibility, right? 在这个时候呢，他就开始把这个责任放在了什么呢？就是市场上面了。
Yeah, so he puts it on two things. One, the market. Like, oh, the market's shifting, it's moving fast, things have happened. Like, everyone knows this, okay? Obviously, the last 2 years, there's not a single person in the world who doesn't know the world has changed. But market shifts are one thing. And then he also, another thing that he really does is he says, okay, I'm up there, I feel I should be the person to do it. And then you kind of subtly like, from your personal email hr@better.com. It's immediately impersonal. So this was supposed to be like him having a hard time, but now he's like, here is a no-name email address. You must use your personal address, which insinuates your company email address is just gone.
Yeah. So 这个时候呢，他马上就说 okay, the market has changed, then we have to move with it in order to survive. 这个时候还用 we as if it's like everyone's responsibility for this laid off, right? 然后他又马上就说 okay, 你等一下呢就会从我们的 HR 的 email address, 然后呢你会收到，而且是在你的 personal 信箱，意思就是说你的公司的这个信箱早就已经被 deleted, right? Yeah. That was brutal.
Yeah, it's really a shift of responsibility. Like he's up there going, oh, I felt I needed to give you the news, but it became, well, it's about me. It's the market's fault. And everything from here on, it's now somebody else's problem.
Yep.
And he tries to say, you know, I want to thank you each individually for contributing to us. But the reality is, again, we're back to when you do this kind of mass firing, sure, it's very efficient.
Yeah.
But now, literally no one who got fired has any, I mean, I don't know the internal politics.
You can't ask questions.
Yeah, you can't ask questions,
Yeah.
but you don't even know what you got fired over. And it's not in his actual video, but later on you find out he was like, oh, you know, people weren't working that hard. I was paying people for 8 hours a day, but in reality, they were only logging into our system and working about 2 hours a day. And this happened after, right? But that's a very blanket statement. 900 people.
Yeah.
So you're telling me 900 people were just, you know, working 2 hours a day? That's probably unlikely.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you guys remember, probably do, financial crisis, right? Back in 2000, I'm going to say 2007, 2008, right? 2007-2008年的时候，那个时候我本身也是在一个 mortgage， 应该是说他们体系这个整个银行体系之下的一个 mortgage department。那我放那个时候呢，当然我们那整个大的 bank 他们就有做一个非常大幅度的 lay off, right? They have to cut like, I don't know, 2%, right? 3%. And you know, a lot of companies were doing that. And one of the things I remember so vividly is to sit there at your desk expecting a call from HR. If you hear the phone ring and you see the HR showed up on the display, you're screwed. 然后你就要到某一个房间。那这个时候你到这房间呢，老板就会跟你讲说 Yeah, of course they're going to lay out like the
Your
reasons.
severance pay or,
you know, they're going to say like, oh, 因为你可能 没办法 我们必须要 cut 多少人啊等等 But at least under that circumstances, you could still ask questions. Why is it happening? Like you need time to process. Do you remember that movie? George Clooney.
Oh, Up in the Air.
Up in the Air.
Or Anna Kendrick, kind of how she blew up.
Exactly. So their job is to lay off people or firing people. So people have a lot of, it's really emotional, right? 这个时候大家有很多的问题，很多的 emotion. So you have to like take your time to walk people through that. But with the Zoom call, you basically take that opportunity away from people.
Yeah, and it made it, again, sound very impersonal. It's like you will get an email with your specific severances.
That's it.
That's it. And it's to your personal email. Like your company access, like you are, I think you said something effective immediately.
Yeah, immediately.
And that meant everything immediately.
Exactly. This is a terrible example, but how do we do a better job giving bad news?
For any of you who had the chance to take our online conference call class, we actually talked about a very specific 4-step process to delivering bad news and gave several examples of how to minimize people's reaction. And the examples I gave is I'm a very avid Kickstarter backer. And Kickstarters, it's just kind of known there will be delays. I've gotten a few Kickstarters on time, but more than half of them, at this point, I have Kickstarters that are 2 years delayed. But you can see very clearly in that knowing how to deliver bad news and then delivering bad news a different way has a completely different reaction. Recently, I backed a kind of like back stretching thing that everyone did. And they're only about 6 months delayed. But they have like 10,000 comments because the way they have handled this is atrociously bad. To the point where they don't respond messages anymore, kind of like better.com. They just have like a very basic FAQ that people can read with their problems. And they don't respond. And it got to that point because people were so upset with the way that they handled information. Whereas I have another Kickstarter that I have backed that it is probably by the time we get it more than 2 years delayed, but they're very, very good about delivering this kind of delay, the update process, maybe 2,000 comments, most of them very positive. So I'm not going to get deeply into this, but just share quickly the 4-step process that we've kind of broken down to how to give bad news. First of all is just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Summarize the bad news. Again, he had a less than 2-minute call and it took him like halfway through it to give the bad news, but the whole time it was very vague and you knew it was coming. So we usually say, just get it up front.
Yeah.
Let people know what's going on. Don't drag them along and wait for it to like kill them from the suspense. Summarize the bad news. He should have just been clear. Unfortunately, today I need to let go of a large amount of our staff. And then explain that reason. Step 2 is explain the reason for the bad news. But don't just give facts. Again, this is an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And you can tie it back to company value. You can tie it back to circumstances. You don't blame the situation. But again, you could say something like, our growth has changed from A to B. The average number of employees that we can support has changed this much. And in order for the company to continue, we've had to make certain decisions. But you can also start to outline some of the reasons why people might be getting let go, especially if it's out of their control, right? So if you're like, okay, during the pandemic, the number of mortgages that we have lent out has shifted from X thousand down to X hundred. So it's not great, but it's reasonable. Like we just don't have enough work for you. And that's not good for you and that's not good for us. But phrase it in terms of things that people can understand.
Okay.
Then talk about actions taken to remedy the situation. I think part of it is it just sounds like, again, corporate overlord. I made a decision to fire 900 of you. But to be honest, did you try anything else?
Yeah.
Did you try and cut expenses anywhere else? Because maybe if they had explained like, over the past year, we have let go of this many office buildings. We have cut expenses in this way. But honestly, it just wasn't enough. then people at least know that you didn't look and go, let's just fire 10%. Right? That there was a process behind it. Again, they don't have to agree, but it doesn't sound like this very mysteriously vague reason. And then make an ask. So make an ask is kind of that call to action. In his case, it was email hr@better.com. Probably not the best thing to do, but make a reasonable ask. If you have any questions, go here. Otherwise, we will contact you. If you would like more information about what's going on, do this thing. But phrase it more from their side. From him is the way he phrased the severance is just, again, we will give you information. Please move on.
Yeah.
And it creates a sort of powerlessness among your employees because they have no control. I woke up this morning and now I don't have a job. And I have no way to know what happened. I have no idea how to improve. Nothing. It's just done.
虽然这件事情真的是 is a terrible news, but the way better.com handle it, 会觉得整个事情都非常的冷血了。It's just so cold, right? 所以刚刚 Nick 有讲说我们在必须要 deliver bad news, okay? 可能或许是公司你必须要跟你的 client cancel orders, 或者是你的这个 contract it just doesn't work, or you're actually firing or laying off people. 我们第一点就是 summarize the bad news. 你不要让人家觉得说你到底在讲什么 But it sounds so bad, but what are you talking about? 你不要让人家觉得好像很模棱两可那种感觉，就是get to the point, straight to the point, right? Number 2, right? You give reasons. 那刚刚 Nick 有讲说，如果我们这个时候能够提供一些数据，提供一些真正的 facts, 去解释一下为什么我们今天要做这件决定。那第3呢，就是 talk about action taken to remedy a situation, 也就是我们之前做了有什么的动作，比如说我们 cut 哪部分的 budget, 有 cut 多少啦，可是并没有任何的成效，或者是你讲一些你已经试过的方法，这样子会让人家感到说你至少有在试试看 right? At least you tried. 那最后就是必须要给对方一个 space, 就是如果他们有问题，如果他们有 concern, 他们还是有办法能够 reach, 能够 contact 你，能够联络到你，而不是就是你把他们踢掉。That's it. See you later.
Yeah, we've cut off your company email. We've cut off your company access. Use your personal email to ask a question here.
Because I remember back in corporate, you would always have the time to send out that mass email. And then you would, in that mass mail, you would thank the people that you wanted to thank, and then you would leave your personal contact in that mass email. They would not delete your account right away.
Or especially the customer side, right? Like this is mortgage lending, which means from the customer, there's also going to be a panic of my contact is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can't explain, they cannot shift you over. It's just...
So I think hopefully with this process, we're not going to say a better way, the best way, right? Giving bad news sucks. Receiving bad news sucks. 但是至少你有一个 process, 能够让人家觉得说好，我现在还能够做一点什么事情 or there is something that they could do, something that they could ask. It's not just like, like Nick said, just powerless, 好像完全没有任何的决定权，没有任何的力量。
Yeah, in a minute and a half, I go from being okay to having nothing.
Exactly.
Well, we hope that you will consider a better way to give bad news and learn from the mistakes of better.com. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.